Tim Young is with us. He's the managing editor of Absolute Rights.
Absolute Rights.
The website absoluterights.com. What's an absolute right?
It's the rights that you're born with, the ability to be free in the world.
Well, when you're born, if your mom just set you down on the concrete and walked away, you wouldn't last very long. So you have a right to be fed.
You have a right to be fed, yes.
Okay. And you have a right to be clothed.
Yes.
Okay. And housed.
And then later on, you have those rights to, freedom of speech.
And then later on, those rights get taken away, right?
Yeah. Well, they could be.
Well, isn't that what you're suggesting? I mean, if you're suggesting that the rights that you're born with, the right that you're born with is the right to food and clothing and housing. I mean, that's what Franklin Roosevelt said in his Second Bill of Rights should actually be rights. And what I usually hear from conservatives and libertarians is, no, once you're of the age of majority, 16, 17, 18, depends on the society, screw that. Those rights are just for kids, and you're on your own, Charlie.
No, I think everybody has a right to be able to be fed and be given just enough to make it on their own and kind of be brought up. I'm more. So
you believe in a welfare state?
I do not believe in a welfare state. I believe in a state where there's more of a hand up than a handout. Like an opportunity should be available to people.
So if everybody has a minimum right for food, how do you make sure everybody has a minimum availability of food?
All right, you might win this one, Tom.
No, I'm trying to understand your epistemology here.
Let me tell you. I don't like the concept of handouts from the government, but I do like the idea.
I get that.
And I do like the idea of having programs in place that kind of help people get to where they need to be.
And particularly people who have no ability to get there. I mean, there are people who are born incapable of working, incapable of talking, incapable of thinking,
and for those elderly folks too who no longer are able-bodied, there needs to be something there to help them out. And so that's where maybe I differ with some Republicans when it comes to like Social Security and things like that, and Medicare, Medicaid. I think that there needs to be a standard for people.
So you consider those programs to fall within the concept of absolute rights?
Yes.
Well, that's interesting. And you're not, unlike we had a guest a little bit ago who was saying, well, government does everything inefficiently, corporations do everything efficiently, Medicare and Medicaid should be administered by the banks and the health insurance companies.
No, you know what? I actually sold technology to the government for a while, the federal government. What I learned is the federal government likes to give money out and then go, oh, we shouldn't have given you that money, let's go back and get it. Or they give it out to fraudsters a lot of times. There are billions and billions of dollars every year that go out to folks that are running, fake clinics, things like that. And the government really doesn't do those forward checks to take a look at things.
Especially the Pentagon.
Yeah.
I mean, the Pentagon is missing $2 trillion.
Yeah.
You're not going to hear any debate from me on that. Although the transparent products, the transparent purchasing that the government does, there are conservative bloggers and reporters and investigators crawling over the butts of every single government bureaucrat and every single program. You find, one program. Oh my God! Look at that. There's waste there in the Department of Agriculture.
There's so much waste everywhere. And the thing that there was a couple of years ago, and I can speak freely more about this now that I'm not in this sales position and I'm doing the political thing. I spoke with both the McCain camp and the Obama camp when they were running for president. The Obama camp was more concerned with what we had to say about recovering the money that was being given out. The McCain camp blew it off.
Yeah,
which blew my mind.
Because they wanted to use that money for social good.
Yeah.
I mean, they actually had an intelligent use for the money, and the conservatives, their only use for the money is give it back to the billionaires.
Well, and it made the Republicans look bad at that point. That all this money had seeped out under their administration, under the W's administration, through Social Security and Medicare.
Yeah, but I got to tell you, I've run businesses over the years where I was selling to the government. We used to sell services. We had an ad agency. We did communication seminars and trainings and things. Our clients included the NSA, the CIA, the U.S. Department of the Army Intelligence. Used to do workshops for them in Europe a lot, and also major Fortune 500 companies, and I could go through a list of them, except that they're private corporations and litigious. And frankly, we had to do better due diligence with our government contracts than we did with our corporate contracts, generally speaking. And I remember sitting with the vice president of marketing of one of the largest hotel chains in the world, who told me bluntly, he thought it was funny, that he would never hire somebody to work for him He would rather contract the work out. He would never hire somebody to work for him within the company who was smarter than he was or better than he was, because he knew that would put his job at risk.
Wow.
And it's like that, that mentality in corporate America. There's waste, fraud, and abuse everywhere.
Oh yeah.
But let's get back to this issue of absolute rights. You before, when we were talking, before we went on the air, you said you were thinking about doing something where you were going to try and get in the room the rhinos, the Republicans in name only. And I'm not sure. Can you give me the name of, for example, of a senator who you think falls in that category for demonstration purposes, so everybody knows what you're talking about?
Honestly, right now, I don't know that there are any that really fall into that, because everybody's
Olympia
trying
Snow?
Yeah,
Maybe.
that would be one.
Susan Collins. Susan Collins is still in office.
I mean, right now, folks are so afraid of the Tea Party, it seems like, and the conservative movement. And when you have people stand up like what Rand Paul did last week, which, although, I mean...
Which John McCain condemned. So does that make him a rhino?
I think that no Republican really wants to work with him at this point. It just seems like he's been like kind of blasted.
Wants to work with John McCain?
Yeah, it just seems like he's that like...
He's that old guy who's yelling, "Get off my lawn."
Yeah. They're kind of hoping...
It's kind of tragic.
Yeah, and it really... Because, I mean, he didn't have terrible ideas the entire time that he was there, but, now he's just kind of...
Yeah.
Get off my lawn! Yeah, that's where he is. But,
okay.
the whole
but you want to
concept-
get the rhinos and the Tea Partiers together.
And the idea is that we keep it away from politics and talk about policy.
Misguided matchmaking impulse. I mean, your mother wanted you to be a Yentl when you grew up?
I didn't want Obama to win. But I took a look at the Republican candidates that were out there in that primary, and they were a joke. I mean, they were all a joke. I mean, and even when it got to Romney, there was nothing to get behind.
Well, I think some of them were even like... The Republicans let them in, the Herman Cains and the Michelle Bachmans, because they were intentionally a joke.
Yes.
They knew that there was no chance whatsoever, so it increased the probability that the guy that they really wanted to be the candidate, who was Romney, would win.
That could be. You thin out the pack by watering it down or whatever.
Well,
with terrible candidates.
It was Nixon's strategy. He did not want to run against Edmund Muskie. So he sends Chuck Colson or whoever up to Maine and puts some acid in the guy's coffee, and next thing you know, Muskie's up on the back of a truck blubbering and talking about his wife and crying, and that's the end of that. He gets to run against George McGovern.
Who was the threat to Romney, though? Was there a threat? I mean,
I think that, well, it was probably too early for Jeb Bush.
Yeah.
And that really speaks to the weakness of the Republican brand,
terrible.
I think.
It was just a terrible crop of candidates, and I had written an ebook that did quite well. It was #1 on and Political Humor on Amazon. 50 Shades of Romney. Here's a hint: they're all white. And I talked about how terrible of a candidate he was from top to bottom, flip-flopping on everything, but how terrible everyone else was with him. So there really wasn't a choice for the Republican Party.
So, frankly, as somebody who's more inclined toward the Democratic or Green Party, I want a healthy Republican Party. I'd like my dad's Republican Party back.
Yeah.
The Eisenhower Party. So you think that's possible? I think that they've been just bought out by the billionaires.
I think it is if you bring in thought leaders and actually start to kind of talk just about policy, keep away from these politicians.
But how do you
and
deal with the whole
entertainers.
Citizens United thing that says that the Koch brothers can buy the party? And David Koch or Charles Koch ran for president of the United States in the 80s on a libertarian ticket.
Call me altruistic, but I like to believe that people in the end will come forward and unite under policy and not be bought out.
Really?
Yes.
Well, I think you're seeing some of that in the Democratic Party with people like Sherrod Brown, independents like Bernie Sanders. I mean, these guys, they stand on their principles, damn it. And
that's what the Republicans need.
Yeah, okay, I'm with you. Very interesting conversation. Tim Young, managing editor, Absolute Rights, absoluterights.com. Thanks, Tim.
Did I get you to agree with me?
I think so.